In this video, we're going to be looking at task 2 of the IELTS writing test. And specifically, we're going to be looking at the types of questions that you might get in this part of the test. But first, let's just have a quick recap on what happens in the writing part of the IELTS test. Now, the writing test lasts 1 hour, and you actually get 2 tasks. Task 1 is slightly easier than task 2. So you get less time for task 1 than you do task 2. Task 1 should take 20 minutes and task 2 should take 40 minutes. Now we want to look in a bit more detail on task 2 in this video. So let's have a think about what happens in this task and the types of questions that you're going to get. Now, like I said, task 2 is a bit more challenging than task 1. One of the things that is quite challenging is the length of your answer to this task. You must write at least 250 words in that 40 minutes, which seems like quite a lot to write. But really, with a bit of practice, it's not too much. But you've got to remember it's important to write at least this amount. Also, in this task, you're going to be writing an essay, which means it's going to have a clear structure with an introduction, body, and conclusion. Now, we need to really think about the type of essay you're going to be writing, because this depends on the type of question you get. Now, of course, there are hundreds of topics that the question could be on, and it's very difficult to prepare for the topics that you're going to get. There's no way of really predicting this, although there are ways to do bits of research and practice and think about certain topics that could come up. We can't guarantee that something you've prepared for and thought about is going to be something that you're going to see in the exam. But there is one thing that you can focus a lot of your preparation on, and that is the type of essay question you're going to get in this part of the test. This is because there really aren't that many different types of question. So if you focus on preparing for these different types, then there shouldn't be any big surprises when you go into the test. And you would have prepared for and have experience with these different types of question. Now, there are 4 specific types of question that you could get in the test. And I've never really seen a question that does not fall into one of these 4 categories. Of course, we don't know exactly what the topic is going to be, but we know you're going to be asked one of these 4 styles of question. Each question type is asking you to do something slightly different. Although in all of these types of question, you have to write an essay. Each essay is going to be a tiny bit different in what you're going to be doing within that essay. So let's just have a quick look at all 4 types of question, and then after that we can go into a bit more detail and I can explain exactly what this type of question is asking you to do, and we'll look at a few examples of these 4 types as well. So, the first type of question is an opinion question. The second type, a discussion and opinion. The third type, a problem and solution question. And the final type is a 2-part question. So these are the 4 types of question. And like I said, it's almost impossible that you're going to see anything in the IELTS test that doesn't fall into one of these 4 types. Let me just go through the different types and explain in a bit more detail what the question is asking you to do. So the first type that I said before is an opinion question. Now, of course, really all of these essay questions are asking for your opinion, but this is when the question is just focused on you and your opinion. It's not asking you to look at someone else's opinion or consider what other people think. It's just what you think about something. So for your whole essay, you're focusing on your own opinion. And don't worry, if you're still a bit confused with this, we will be looking at an example later in the video. But for now, let's move on to the next type of question. This is the discussion and opinion type of question. Now, in this type of question, you won't only be asked to give your opinion. You will be asked to discuss two opinions or two sides of an argument. Now, of course, your job is to take one side of that argument or also give your own opinion. But the idea here is this type of question is not just focused on you and your opinion. You have to show that you understand the other side of the argument or another opinion. So it's slightly different to the first type. It doesn't mean it's more difficult, really. It just means you have to do something slightly different to the first type of question. So that's the second type, a discussion and opinion. One thing I should mention about this type is that sometimes you might see a question that maybe just asks you to discuss a topic, maybe to look at the advantages and disadvantages of something, and it doesn't actually clearly ask you directly for your opinion. So that's why sometimes in this type of question you must show your opinion, and sometimes the question doesn't ask you to give your opinion. But it should be quite obvious when you're reading the question. And again, we're going to look at an example of this type of question later on in the video. Let's quickly move to the third type of question. Now, the third type of question is a problem and solution question. Now, this means that in the essay or in the question, it's going to ask you to write about a problem or problems, and then after that give solutions to that problem or those problems. So a problem solution essay. This one doesn't seem too difficult really, and it's quite simple to structure this type of essay. But it's another type that's quite common and does come up quite often in the IELTS writing test. So that's the third type. And we will be looking at an example of this type of question later. But let's move to the fourth type of question. This type is a two-part question. And this basically means that you're going to see two questions within the essay question. You'll see two question marks. So there'll be two separate questions that will be connected to the same topic of the essay, but you have to answer both questions. And again, we will be looking at an example of this type. And this is one that can come up in the IELTS test. It's not the most common type of question, but you must be ready for this type. But again, it's not too difficult, especially to structure your answer to this type of question. So now we've thought about those four different types of question. Let's have a look at an example of each type. So, the first type, if you remember, was an opinion essay. Now, in an opinion essay, remember, the question is just focused on you and your opinion on something. And usually this type of question is going to show you an opinion and ask you to react to that opinion. Let's look at an example really quickly. Here one is. So, Here it says, some people who have been in prison become good citizens later. And it is often argued that these are the best people to talk to teenagers about the dangers of committing a crime. To what extent do you agree or disagree? So there's a clear example of an opinion style question. You can see here actually it begins with a fact rather than an opinion. Some people who have been in prison become good citizens later. Now, clearly this is true. This sometimes happens. People who are in prison and they come out sometimes become good citizens. This type of question doesn't always start with a fact. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. What it always has is what happens next in this question, and that is an opinion. Look here. And it is often argued that these are the best people to talk to teenagers about the dangers of committing a crime. So this is an opinion. The opinion that these are the best people, the people who've been in prison and then come out of prison later and they're reformed, they become good citizens. These are the best people to talk to teenagers about the dangers of committing a crime. So the dangers of breaking the law. So this is an opinion. Your job is to react to that opinion. And that is made clear to you with the next part of the question. To what extent do you agree or disagree? So you can see here it's asking you what you think. Do you agree or do you disagree with this? You don't have to give both sides. You could just give one side. You can agree or disagree. You could even look at both sides when you're answering this type of question. But the key thing is here is you're focusing on your own ideas and your own opinions. You're not worrying about explaining what other people think. Often with this type of question, you will see the words agree or disagree. To what extent do you agree or disagree? But not always. You won't always see this phrase in this type of question, but it will be clear that the focus is you and your opinion. So that's the first type. Let's have a look at an example of the second type of question. Now, if you remember, the second type was a discussion plus opinion. So let's have a quick look at this style of question. Here it is. Some people think that all university students should study whatever they like. Others believe that they should only be allowed to study subjects that will be useful in the future, such as those related to science and technology. Discuss both these views and give your own opinion. So, it's quite a long question, and these types of questions often do look a bit longer. I mean, they need more words in the question. That doesn't mean they're more difficult. It might mean it takes a little bit longer to read the question. But here, they're giving two sides of an argument. You can see here in this question, it says some people think one thing and others believe another thing. Two opposite sides of an opinion. Here the topic is what students should study at university. But of course the topic can change. But in this style of question, you've got two sides of an argument. There's no facts here, right? You can see in the previous question we had a fact at the beginning. Here we've just got two sides of an argument. And then the final phrase at the bottom of the question is to discuss both these views and give your own opinion. So really it makes it very clear that you have to look at both sides. And you also have to say what you think too. So that's the second type, a discussion and opinion essay. Let's have a look at an example of the third type. If you remember, the third type was a problem and solution essay. So here's an example of this type of question. More and more people are migrating to cities in search of a better life. But city life can be extremely difficult. Explain some difficulties of living in a city. How can governments make urban life better for everyone? So there's the question, a problem-solution question. It's starting off with a fact. More and more people are migrating to cities in search of a better life. This is just a fact, it's something that's happening. And then, but city life can be extremely difficult, which is also a fact, it can be difficult. Not always, but it can be difficult. So it's presenting a fact. Then, after this, it asks you to explain the difficulties of living in a city. So it's asking you to explain the problems of living in a city. Of course, here it's more than one. It's not just one problem. You can see we've got the plural form of difficulty, difficulties. So you've got to explain a couple or 3 difficulties of living in a city. But then after that, you're going to have to give some solutions because the question says, how can governments make urban life better for everyone? So there we write the solutions to these problems. So there is the third type of question, an example of this. Now the final type of question was the 2-part question. Let's have a look at an example of this type. Here it is. Many people prefer to watch foreign films rather than locally produced films. Why could this be? Should governments give more financial support to local film industries? So, you can see here, again, we're starting off with a fact. Many people prefer to watch foreign films rather than domestically or locally produced films. So this is just a simple fact. When you go to a lot of countries, they maybe like to watch foreign films more than they like to watch their own local films. Not in all countries, but in a lot of countries around the world, this is the case. Hollywood films are popular all around the world. Anyway, that is beginning the question with a fact. But then you look here, we've got the first part of this question. Why could this be? And then a question mark. And then, should governments give more financial support to local film industries? And then another question mark. So in this type of question, you can see 2 question marks, which clearly shows there's 2 questions. It's not quite the same as a problem solution. It's not asking you for any solutions to a problem, but it's asking you 2 separate questions, and you have to make sure that you answer both questions when you write your essay. So there we go. We've looked at 4 examples of those 4 different types of essay questions. When you're in the test, you're not going to get a question that falls outside of these 4 different types. But the topic of your question might not be a topic that we've seen here. Now, we have 4 separate topics that we've looked at here today. One is about prisons and people committing crime. The other one was about universities and what subjects students should study at universities. The third type was the topic of migrating to cities, so the topic of cities and migration. And then the final topic was on films and people watching foreign films or local films. So we've got 4 different types of topics there. Now, there are more than 4 different topics that could come up in the exam. There are hundreds of topics of questions for the Task 2 questions in the IELTS test. But there aren't more than 4 different types of questions. so you know what you're going to have to do when you're in the test. You're either going to have to focus on your opinion and explain your opinion, or you're going to have to discuss two sides of an argument and give your opinion, or you'll have to explain the problems and solutions of a topic, or finally you'll have to answer a two-part question with 2 question marks. And those are the only 4 types of questions that you could be getting in task 2 of the IELTS writing test. Of course, in future videos, we're going to be going into more detail on different topics and example essays and structures that we can use when we're answering these types of questions. But hopefully this video has given you a good idea on the different types of questions that you could be getting when you're in task 2 of the IELTS writing test. I really hope this video has been useful for you. And if you did find it useful and you liked the video, don't forget to give it a like. And if you don't want to miss any future videos on similar topics, then don't forget to click subscribe as well. Anyway, thanks for watching and see you again in the next video.